I'm Ryan Ozimek. I'm from the Joomla project, and I came here because I wanted to help our community learn a little more about what we can do to be better. We're large and growing, and one of the things that we have to do a better job at is including folks and making sure that people feel empowered. And I felt like this would be probably the best place to go to learn the horror stories as well as the success stories that we can take back to the Joomla project.
Okay, so what is one great story that you've heard so far?
Oh, I've heard a lot, actually.
Okay.
Some of the best stories I've heard is just learning how to engage volunteers with paid engineers and development teams, which is something that is always intriguing when projects get bigger.
Right.
And to hear how the Mozilla project is doing that has been really, really useful.
So tell us.
So it seems as though what you want to do is to find a way not to say folks that are getting paid for the work are the only people that matter. You want to find a way to continue to have equal input and accessibility to the project by those that are being paid for their work and those that are volunteers.
Right.
And volunteers, because these people volunteer hundreds of hours a month.
Right.
So you need to find a way to get them engaged. And the easiest way to do that is just being transparent and open and having a very a strong meritocracy. People that are doing good work are the ones that get to take on more leadership.
Right. Okay.
That's it. Simple.
Okay. Sounds good. Simple to say, maybe not so simple to execute.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's a balancing act too. You have to be mature enough in your project to know when you're able to make that shift.
Right.
And it sounds like a lot of people here are still trying to find that
tipping
point out, and it's probably a bit of a challenge. It's something that you have to do once you get to a certain size, and the community needs to know that there's a long roadmap ahead that you can count on.
Okay, so now the opposite, the bad story. Although make sure you protect people's privacy as much as possible, but kind of describe a situation and I guess how it was resolved, if it was resolved.
Yeah, in that same vein, hearing stories about how some projects found that by paying folks for their work, it actually de-incentivized people to work as hard as they did when they were volunteers in the past.
Interesting.
And what we learned is that it's easiest to pay the folks that are doing corollary tasks, but not necessarily mission-driven tasks. So paying your lawyers and your accountants and all those people that aren't writing code, that's an easy thing to do.
Right.
But the horror story of when you start having community managers and people that have been posting a lot of answers and solutions to people on the forums, that sometimes some projects found that they actually contributed less and they felt like they had an entitlement. They weren't being paid because they were doing great work and they needed to be doing something very specific, but rather because they felt they deserved it, and so they started to take less of a role in the project. So to avoid that would be really important.
Interesting. Anything else so what's been the most interesting story you've heard or interesting session you've gone to, and why did you find it was interesting?
I thought one of the most interesting sessions was one on community crossovers and how either businesses or other open source projects can start to work together and partner together on stuff. It was one of the 30-minute shorter sessions.
Right.
And I think it could have gone on for hours.
Okay.
And I think the thing that I took away from it was there's certain metrics that you should be looking at as a business and getting involved in projects, looking at its maturity, its size, the leadership, and taking all these things into account before you just hop into bed with an open source project.
Okay.
And finding ways to do that can really help you lead a successful engagement between, say, a business and an open source project, which is, again, one of those slippery roads that people are always a little weary about. Do we want to have our project tainted by these businesses coming in? But there's ways to do it with ambassadors and people that are there to help, rather than people that are there to take over a project.
Right. And on the corporate side of, do we want to use open source? I've been on the enterprise side, and the discussion is always around, oh my God, it's too freewheeling. Legal will have a heart failure. We can't do it. There's too many uncontrollable factors.
Yeah.
So hearing the other side of it is interesting.
And I think one of the things that we didn't get enough time to talk about is how do we as community managers or people in these open source projects, how do we go back to, a business's accounting team or a marketing team and say, this is critical and these are the kinds of returns or the kinds of success that we can see as a business if we invest in assisting and helping out these open source communities. And I think that it was easier for us to resolve as open source projects what are good ways to engage with people from other projects and businesses.
Right.
I think the thing that we didn't get a chance to go to, but would be great for a follow-up, is to see how people in businesses can go back to their businesses and say, there is strong bottom line reasons for us to invest in these kinds of projects.
Great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Good
you.
information and appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Okay.